Good afternoon, my friends. This is a less DNRS focused video. I have just been, how to say this? I associate / am in contact, aware of a variety of different spiritual circles, and this is more focused on spirituality and humanity and basically the interplay between the physical world and the spiritual world. And it's called The Ego is Not the Enemy. Because I see there's two kind of camps. Well, I actually don't want to go there right now. I'm hoping you've heard the phrase before, all the world's a stage and we are merely actors in it. You know, and it's whatever you make of it. You are whatever you make yourself to be, and your life is whatever you make it to be. And that's true. And that's a beautiful thing. And that is why your ego is not your enemy. Your ego is your character. And that's a good thing. That's a really, really good thing. Because this world would be a really inhuman, boring place if there were no characters. And part of the understanding too is that as characters in this game of life, we have power. We influence the spiritual realm by our physical actions. So which character we decide to be, who we decide to become as a person who is dualistic, and this is a common thing too, there's kind of this concept of non-dual thinking and dual thinking, and reality is both non-dual and dual at the same time, because the reality is we are all made of God fabric. We are all sparks of the eternal flame. We are all made of God. And we're also all completely individual. Human beings with separate bodies and separate minds. We are separate from one another just as much as we are also not separate from one another. And there's two different camps people can fall into here. You can be so this is what I was saying a minute ago. You can be over-focused on the spiritual, and people who are over-spiritual. And again, if you're over-focused on either the spiritual or the physical, you're going to be less than fully human. Because human beings, we really truly are animals with spirit inside of us. It is the most unbelievably crazy and amazing thing to be human. Like, it is mind-blowing to just be a human being. Is incredible. And the people who are over-focused on the spiritual tend to be, I wrote it down here. Yeah, people who don't have a sense of humor, people who don't get excited about life anymore. Like, if you know anyone who's so focused on being like humble or not caring about themselves so much that like you can't even buy them a present because they don't like anything or dislike anything, because they're like, oh, I don't need anything, I'm fine, like I don't care, I'm good with whatever. It's like, you're not a person. Like, people like things and they don't like things. That's part of being human. And a lot of times those people will just never ever be angry about anything. And it's like, also, again, if you stand up for things, if you stand up for the truth, you'll be human, you'll have emotions. I'm going to jump from this into this biggest example. Again, I am Catholic, I'll say that again, and this is what I believe, and even if you don't believe this, I think take it for what it's worth, because it's a helpful example, even if you don't believe it. So, the Incarnation of Jesus is the most radical example of this, because God is complete mystery. I have mystic experiences on a regular basis in my life, and my experience of God has completely obliterated all the ideas of God I used to have growing up as a cradle Roman Catholic. And yet I'm still Catholic, and I see, in these mystic experiences, I find both my own humanity and God's divinity and his divinity within my humanity. And it's amazing because we're human. Like, on that physical plane, we need people and things in the flesh. On my healing journey, there was a point at which I reached this last summer where I could only go so far in my healing before I had to actually have real life experiences with people. Like, I did visualization and I connect with people via technology, but there reached a point where I needed to actually be with people in the flesh. And I had a period of about 2 or 3 weeks over the summer in July and August where I did 2 unbelievably amazing hikes with 2 friends in the flesh. I did a road trip and visited family and another friend in the flesh. I had one of my oldest nephew came and visited for a few days and was just here for several hours a day. And it was just like so different because we're human. We are animals when we have a brain, and our brains, they really perceive better. They learn better through something that is like attached to the senses. They perceive what is spiritual better when it comes directly through the senses, which is another beautiful part of being Catholic, because so much of Catholic, the Mass and so on, is based on that principle. Like, that's why we use incense. That's why we take different positions and so on, because it's easier for it's easier to receive the spiritual through the physical. And I was so radically transformed by a couple of weeks of actually physically being with people. I learned so much more in that time than I could have possibly. I mean, I learned things I couldn't have learned unless I was in the flesh with people. And so we need that. So Jesus becoming incarnate, like God, this like, again, and I know people who are so spiritual that they like don't even want to give an idea to God, and I respect that, because God is such utter mystery. So the idea that God, this mystery that he is, this reality of God, became one man in the course of entire history is so ludicrous, at the same time necessary for us as humans to be able to reconcile our humanity and our inherent like divinity, our being made in God's image, our inherent like image, we are made in the image of God, that inherent divinity that we have as his children, to be able to reconcile our spirituality and our physicality together. And he got angry. Like, Jesus had boundaries. He got mad. He went to the temple and flipped tables. Like, he would run away from people. Like, I had this realization the other day. I was doing my thing and I was like, Jesus never explained himself to people. He didn't like say things and then try to like make sure everyone understood what he was talking about. He would just say things, like he basically just say shit and then like walk away. And then there's all these times where they're like, and Jesus left the crowd to go find solitude because everyone was driving him nuts, basically. Like, that's not what it says, but that's basically like, there's too many people, I gotta get out of here. And he'd get in a boat and like try to get away from the people. And it's funny because a lot of times modern day Christians and various kinds of people will be like, oh, I sacrificed my well-being for this. It's like, Jesus didn't do that. He's like, get me out of here, people. Like, get me away from all these people. I need to rest. He was profoundly human, and he would say things to his disciples, like his apostles, like, get behind me, Satan. Like, he had opinions. He said them. He was okay with like making waves and causing conflict. Like, he did not run away from that. He was very human as much as he was God. And this is so true for each of us. And so it's so important to embrace both aspects. And this is very, very connected to the last video I made called We Are All Children, because our ego is essentially that it's all of our inner children, and the other video that's connected to this is Facing Your Shadow Self. I need to change it. It's called Face Your Shadow, but it's about facing your shadow self and understanding that these darker parts of us, these animalistic ego pieces of us, are part of being human. And in order to become the character, the most amazing character that's most true to us that we can be, and again, this is the thing too, is this is the beauty of the fact that life is both dual and non-dual. Like, yeah, we're all human, we all have these inherent similarities, and yet we are each meant to be very much unique. And that is dualism, that's separation. Dualism has to do with there's two separate things that aren't the same. And non-dual is, be seeing that both hand perspective. And even non-dualism and dualism are non-dual and dual at the same time. There's like a higher way to see that, and it's kind of crazy. But we each have our own particular role that we can play if we choose to. Like, we can step up and be the greatest character that God created us to be, like the biggest version of ourselves. That is a real thing. And we can either do that or not. Again, that's also dual. Like, we have a choice to become all we can be or not. And there's a clear, like, it's one or the other. You can be all that you can be, or you can choose to be less than what you can be. Like, we know inside when we're not living up to who we are. We know when we're falling short of the mark. Like, we know that. That's a real thing. But again, this is where the ego is your friend, not your enemy. Because when you take all that human power you have of your personality, your sexuality, your appearance, your charisma, your unique likes and dislikes, and you use that to your advantage. to make your character really powerful in this game and to have the most appeal to other humans, because we are human and most people relate better to the physical than the spiritual. Like that's more typical. So if you are a spiritual person wanting, in this world, and you consider yourself more of a spiritual person, you're actually going to get farther in making an impact on the world and achieving your spiritual purposes by becoming fully human and developing and taking that ego and making it yours. Becoming all that you can be. And it's kind of being able to hold it in balance, understanding that you're playing a character. So you have your likes and your dislikes, you have your personality. But at the same time, when you do have that non-dual perspective of understanding that we are all made of God fabric and that nothing's really a big deal because God is truly running the show in a sense, you can kind of take it lightly. So you can get in there and you can play and you can have a good time and know that at the end of the day, like, everything's okay because God. So like if someone, rains on your parade, it's like, okay, well, whatever. Like, not a big deal. I'm not really the one in charge here anyways. I had a good time playing. I lost today. Who cares? God wins in the end. So that means I win in the end. Go home and go sleep. Like, not a big deal. And that's where people who are overfocused on the physical get tied up with thinking that the physical is all there is. So if someone rains in their parade, it's like the world ended, which is very different. And so it's being human and making your ego your friend. I mean, that is being human. It's being able to hold both of these things together that seem opposing. It's a both and perspective. And all of that it's so important. And again, like how we do this is, I've taught about it. It's incorporating your shadow self. It's meeting your actual needs, getting to actually know yourself, allowing yourself to be all you can be and put yourself out there while knowing that in the end, like, it is a game. It is a play. It's not the end of the world if your character dies or your character isn't the main character or your character happens to be the servant or whatever. It's like, well, who cares? It's a game. Like, but it does make sense to make that character all they can be. And we do that by embracing all of our humanity. All of our childlikeness, our playfulness, our likes and dislikes. Again, just incorporating your ego into yourself. It's your friend. It's a way to, but you see, I think the thing too that happens is, if people take an overly spiritual approach, they see the ego as the enemy because they think that it cannot be taken up. And the reality is your ego can be taken up into the spiritual. It can be made your own. You're not at war with yourself. That's not the point. The point is to make friends with yourself and become at peace with yourself, and to understand yourself in the light of truth, in the light of God, in the light of actual reality, and understand that, I mean, your ego's important, but it's not the end all be all. It still is just a character. It's not that important, but it is important. And it's that kind of being able to hold those two things together that makes it tricky. But again, the first step to undemonizing your ego is understanding that it's a character you play and it's your friend, and there's a purpose for it. And it can be like, I'll have to make another video about this because I haven't thought it through yet. But one thing I've learned on my journey is that we actually are, I would say, our most holy, certainly our most human, when we're fully embodying our kind of animalistic self, just being like for example, even this sweatshirt, like I love it because it's so soft. And I will sometimes lay in bed with like my soft sweatshirt and a soft blanket and just be like so happy and warm and cozy. And I'll lay there and I'll go, thank you, Daddy. Like, thanking God for how wonderfully soft and cozy it is that I get to lay down and rest when I'm tired. And like, that's both being an utter child of God and a total like cat or dog at the same time, like very much an animal. This is coming from the same person who's like, take me to the desert, take me to the mountains, I need to go climb something. And like, like I can also be very aggressive and rough and kind of extreme, but like, even that is an expression of aggression. Aggression is a animalistic thing that kind of, and this is like too, in terms of even my particular journey, I can give a couple short examples from that. as I dived into my sexuality pretty deeply and my sensuality and my femininity, I was like, I'm not my body, but I have a body, so I'm going to take good care of it. And, you know, I've got an averagely pretty face. Might as well stick it in front of a camera and say things. People pay more attention, you know, like when you're decent looking. Like, it's just one of those things where it's like, if you know how the rules of the game, why not play by them? It just makes sense. And so that's one thing. I am very aggressive. I'm not competitive, but I'm very aggressive. I have a lot of aggressive tendencies. I use that on myself. I like to challenge myself. So instead of being aggressive toward other people, I'm aggressive with myself, and I challenge myself as to like, how far can I push something good? Like, how far can I push myself spiritually, or how far can I push myself physically with, you know, hiking or walking or dancing or climbing things, and how far can I push my fears? Because I'm overcoming still as I push it, a lifelong fear of heights from the time I was about 9. I had an incident and it got in there, and I took a long hike over the summer and really challenged that, and I've been challenging it ever since then. But understanding that you can use those things to your benefit. Like, if you're having a day where you're really just kind of like an angsty teenager, like, if you can punch a punching bag, go for it. You'll get some exercise. If you can take a long walk or a run, go. It'll be good for your body. I've had a desire to be able to just like destroy something in a construction type of way. Like, give me a concrete wall. I just want to like obliterate something. And those things can be really useful at times. Like, you can put that energy to work in a helpful way. I've even had situations where I see people talking about things and it drives me a little nuts, as it does, I think, to everybody. When you see people living in ways that are not in line with the truth, it can drive you nuts. And I've taken that anger and put it towards myself. And I've said, well, if someone else's bullshit's making me angry, then clearly I've still got bullshit. So I'm going to put all of my anger toward myself and driving myself higher on this path so that I can get rid of my own bullshit and work towards my purpose more. And so I've taken that anger and made it useful. And again, so these are just a couple of examples of ways that you can take those shadow parts of you and make them useful. Another thing too, in terms of like the sexuality piece, aside from, you know, wherever you're at in life, obviously you can play that out in your relationship, but I really believe our sexual energy is so much more powerful than, it goes so far beyond sex. Like, it has so many other purposes, and I've harnessed it because I just believe there's an inherent power in it. When you have come into your sexuality and into your own sexual power, your own sensuality, into your body, you just are more present. You're more, people notice, and it impacts people. It's a visceral, physical, animal thing. So it's a way to have a bigger impact on people without saying anything. People just notice that you're human and you're there and you're like alive, and they respect that. It gets people's attention. It has, again, and because these physical characters we play impact the spiritual reality, like, we do have real power to change things in this world. That matters. It matters to take care of your body and to develop your sexuality and to own your sexual power, and not be so busy pretending to be humble that you pretend that you don't have power over other people, because you do. Like, if you're an attractive human being, you have power over people, and that is a real thing. And it's one of those things of this, again, dual and non-dual, of understanding that physical beauty is not the most powerful thing, but it is a powerful thing, and it's something people notice. So if you have that, if that's a card you were dealt in life, use it well, because you're only going to have it for so long, and you were dealt the card. You might as well play it well to win as much as you can for a good purpose, right? And it's, again, it goes, that goes with anything. If you have got a great voice, if you're great at sports, if you're just really charismatic with people, like, we're all kind of dealt a hand of cards in terms of our ego and like what our particular strengths are on that physical plane. Some of us are brilliant, have brilliant intellects. There's just so many things that are considered. Some of us are blessed with incredible wealth and success and money, and all of those things can be used for good. Like, that hand of cards you've been dealt on that physical plane of money and good looks and skills and talents and so on, can all be used to further a purpose that is based in love and that serves that higher good of all humanity. And that's the point. of your ego is to give you more power to serve and to uplift humanity. So it matters. It's not the most important thing, but it's a powerful thing. One of my favorite examples of this, to close, is one of my favorite books I tell everyone I know about is called The Great Divorce, and it's by C.S. Lewis. And there's a scene in it where this man who's on the brink of going from purgatory into heaven, and there's someone, he's like kind of in this in-between land. And all the people there, it's very symbolistic. It's just very symbolic. It's a beautiful book. And this man has a lizard on his shoulder, and the lizard has a chain around his neck, and the lizard's controlling him. And the symbolism in the book is that the lizard represents lust. But that lizard could represent your ego as a whole. And either your ego can have you around the neck, but what happens is he decides that he wants to join. He changes his mind, and he chooses to enter into this kingdom of heaven and to go up into the mountains of heaven. And what happens is it looks like he and the lizard are dying. And that's what it's like when you actually incorporate your shadow self and you do the work. It feels like you are dying. It feels like you're killing parts of yourself, because you are actually killing parts of yourself, and then they become reborn. And what happens is this lizard is reborn as a stallion and is renamed Desire. And it's what he rides to heaven. That's a brilliant example of how every aspect of your ego can serve you. It's a matter of understanding that powerful stallion is yours to ride, and you don't want to take its power away. You want to harness it and point it in the direction you want to go in, and then ride as fast and hard as you possibly can. That's the point of your ego, and that is why your ego is your friend and not your enemy. And that's that. Much love.